Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds has been many things over the years, since its inception 50 years ago to the musical stage tour, which is heading out on the road. To tell us more, I'm joined now by Jeff himself. How you doing, sir? You good?
I'm all good, Jason. Thank you. Nice to be with you.
Well, good to have you along. So I think, was it what, something like 1975? You first got the idea and the rights, and then it sort of progressed from there.
It did. And the original double album came out in 1978. So that's about 46 years ago.
This is a 35th anniversary that we're looking at here, isn't it?
You're not wrong about a 35th anniversary, but it's to do with when one of the singles called The Eve of the War, which is the main theme from the War of the Worlds, was remixed and it went to top of the charts in the UK and a few other countries. And it just happens that we're talking virtually to the day when it's 35 years ago that it happened. But not to worry, we're talking about today and tomorrow.
Absolutely. Now, but as it goes, I mean, that remix, the Ben Liebrand remix, I remember that coming out. So that makes me feel old. I know that much because it being so long ago. And I mean, this has sort of taken on a whole life of its own, hasn't it, this project?
The War of the Worlds and the Martians have taken over my life uh, in a way that I never expected. Because when I first composed and produced it, it was the height of the punk revolution. Disco was king of the dance floor. And there I was coming out with a double album, continuous play, no cuts on it, and linked together by a fantastic story by H.G. Wells and told by a Welsh actor. And I don't think anybody thought it fit into into the sort of music consciousness of the way it did. I also, just as a memory, recall being asked just before it came out, doing a few interviews, what did I think the chances of it having any success? And the truth was, I answered thinking, if I can see it in the UK album charts for 1 week, just 1 week, I'd feel not just satisfied, but that I hadn't let all the amazing performers, musicians, artists, and even the record company down, not realizing that very soon after it was released and it spent 330 consecutive weeks in the British charts.
Well, yeah, and I think the initial sales were something like about 2.5 million copies in the UK, more than 50 million worldwide. The excitement around the singles that have come from it. I remember the re-release on CD being an exciting time back in what must have been the latter part of the 80s. And it's all of these things that have sort of fueled the fans' love for this, but has brought new audiences along the way.
Yes, and once it came out and had an acceptance by the public, and it was a youth buying public when it first came out. Plus, of course, the media and the critics. It all seemed to stack up in our favor, and it's had an unexpected life ever since, with so many different variations of what I first came out with.
Yeah, and merchandise as well. It's an album with merchandise.
Well, yeah, it has spawned quite a lot, in fact. Again, looking back over the many years, things that I would never have dreamed would be a merchandise type of item. But we're very careful with what we do. We don't try to overload the amount of merchandise. We make sure it's designed and manufactured well. I don't want to look like, from the War of the Worlds point of view, we're just milking a Martian in this case.
Absolutely not. But it's about protecting the brand and protecting the whole idea and concept of this. And we're going back, as we say, the best part of 50 years. And sadly, some of those stars that who are on there are no longer with us, but their work lives on and comes to new audiences again through the magic of this recording.
It has, and you're absolutely right. As life, hits us, we lose people that we love, admire, and on my original double album, there's now less people alive, I think, than that appeared on it than obviously those that have gone on to be in our arena tours, our immersive experiences. But it's just one of those things that it's become a part of my life in a way that I never anticipated. And I'm now, as we play our arena tours, which we started in 2006, I'm actually physically been observing the type of people that come to see it. And it's gone sort of full circle because when the double album came out and the singles that we had that were hits, it was a youth orientated acceptance. And now those people are grandparents. They brought their children, and their children are bringing their young children. And I see it at all of our tours and certain events that I might appear at. But what a life.
Absolutely, and it's a life-changing moment for you, and one which is I'm just giving you a chance to show off your talent. 'Cause I think at the time you hadn't had chance to do as much of the record producing side of things and then the creativity in this direction you're composing, because you were too busy touring with other people, weren't you?
Well, it was a combination of that. I always, until the War of the Worlds, Jason, I always considered myself proudly as a backroom boy.
Mhm.
You know, the guys that, or the ladies that get commissioned to compose media music, produce artists who have got great talent. And that's what I was doing. And I was doing a lot of it and enjoying my career very much. The War of the Worlds became the first project that I ever had my name above the title, so to speak, where I was the overall artist and had the good fortune of attracting some amazing guest artists on the original double album. So that's the project that I guess I stepped out a bit. And every tour since we began in 2006, I'm on stage conducting it. It's the payoff to everything because ask any musician or any artist that performs live, it's probably the most adrenaline pumping, exciting point in one's career. And if you're a composer like I am, and I'm talking to you from my studio, I live in Hertfordshire, by the way.
Mhm.
Um, you know, even with computers and working with a team here in my studio, it's still, particularly at the composing and arranging stage, quite I don't mean lonely in the sad sense. I mean it's an alone type of career. So the complete opposite of that is getting out and jumping around on a podium for 2.5 hours and my own work. I'm sort of like a uh, 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 where my feet are off the ground, for 2.5 hours, and it's only when the show's over and I return to earth, so to speak, that I realize, wow, that was a blast.
You're kind of levitating in a tractor being held up aloft by a Martian ship.
Much as I'd like. I actually ask our crew every once in a while when we do a new tour, can you fly me in when it's my turn to arrive on stage or do something beyond me just being I come down, take a bow, and then get up on the podium. But they haven't yet given me any solution to that request.
The money spent elsewhere with the likes of a Liam Neeson 3D hologram. I mean, that's going to bring this show to life even more, isn't it?
Well, it was a treat to work with Liam. My original double album for the first 4 or 5 tours, we brought Richard Burton back to life as a 3D talking head.
Hmm.
Uh, and technology changed to where now Liam Neeson is a full body in many of the sequences, um, holographic, not a hologram, but a holographic performance. And even this next tour, we've upped the ante because we've invested in brand new screen technology, all from tiny little LED lights. And the clarity, the 3D element is startling. And we thought we had a great 3D performance when we first started working with Liam. But he didn't threaten me to come out and say, I will find you and kill you if I don't look fantastic. But it was a pleasure working with him.
Absolutely, I can imagine it was, and a joy working with everybody else who's part of this production. I mean, the tour is sort of March time next year, isn't it? It begins in March, runs through into April. We're in Birmingham in the latter part of the tour, as it's the 18th of April that you'll be in Brum, our closest gig. But there will be people following you all up and down the country. I'm sure there'll be people attending several different events.
I've learned over the years and with a lot of gratitude, that we have sort of, I hope, earned fans that do come to see much more than just one show. I would never have dreamed it, but as I said, I'm very grateful for such commitment. You can't ask for anything more.
And alongside this, you've been supporting this year's album day. The obviously vinyl is the order of the day, and an interesting shade of vinyl was released for the 19th.
It's a double album of club remixes in bright orange and yellow, and we're launching it as part of National Album Day. It's called Ula de Bula, which, just for those who don't know what I'm talking about or what language I'm speaking, Ula is an H.G. Wells creation. When the Martians land and start terrorizing the Earth, or when they're dying at the very end, uh, as a death wail. Ula was a piece of music that I wrote to match those moods and that word. So when we did this double album, Ula and then dub, as in dub music, and then Ula again, but it's one word and it's pronounced Ula de Bula.
One to look out for in, as I say, a rather fetching yellow and orange double vinyl, which I think that sounds absolutely fantastic.
I know it sounds great and very proud of it.
Absolutely, I expect nothing less because you are about the quality. That's the thing. I mean, you've never scrimped there, have you?
Well, I'd like to think not. There's for, I guess, two main reasons. When I started touring the War of the Worlds, so that was in 2006, I sort of promised myself very quietly that if I was invited back to tour a second time, I wouldn't do it exactly the same way. I always want to treat it as a living work, to develop it in ways that, as an arena production, it becomes more and more spectacular, not knowing that here I'm talking to you 18, 19 years later, and we're still doing these arena tours. And we've been all over the UK, Ireland, Europe, been as far as Australia and New Zealand, and never have I once uh, produced the production the same way. There's always new and wonderful ways to explore it. And the other, as the second reason, is I've never wanted to feel that we're just taking it out of the box and doing it the same way so that the maximum amount of dosh can be earned. That isn't my raison d'etre, not with the War of the Worlds. It's to keep challenging myself, to give our audiences, our listeners, something that they'll feel, yeah, that was well worth the money that they've spent on a ticket or an album.
Yeah, it's more than a tour. It is an experience each time you see this, and I think yeah, that's really at the heart of what you're doing, and yeah, sharing what was originally, as you said, H.G. Wells' story in new and innovative ways, which sort of engage with audiences across half a century.
Yes, indeed. The thing is, when H.G. Wells wrote his story in 1897, uh, it was a dark, it still is, a dark Victorian tale. And he was writing it with a couple of viewpoints about it, um, Jason, because he was actually taking a bit of a pop at the expanding British Empire, which was at its peak during that period.
Mhm.
And he was anti-invasion, no matter, and who wouldn't be, uh, from one nation taking over another, even if it was your own country. So the Martians were the invaders in his imagination, who came from Mars with incredible machines, incredible weaponry, and the Martians themselves are like the size of a giant bear, and they're all brain, and they need the various machines to reside in with the weapons to really become a whole body, very bionic. That's
Mhm.
a pretty cool concept considering he wrote that idea in 1897. But for me, after I read the story, I also found it definitely wasn't a shoot 'em up, knock 'em down sort of sci-fi story. It had underlying themes, which really is what bound me to the love of this work, including about invasion, but it also challenges faith, hope, love, and all the key characters that we meet along the way have something to say about each of those subjects, all bound together by a very exciting and visionary story, the first science fiction story ever written.
It's been inspirational in its own right. Your work is exactly the same, and inspiring others not only to enjoy the event, but also, I'm sure, to many people who've written things. Even at the moment, some of the music is being borrowed to inspire people in the world of telephony as well, with the EE advert too. So it is everywhere, isn't it?
It is, and that one surprised me, but it's amazing how many people have told me, "Oh, we heard your music on the EE ad," and uh, yeah, great, fantastic.
It's a joy to be heard wherever you're being heard, and again, it just shows the magic and the impact that this has had on so many people. myticket.co.uk is where you go to grab your tickets for the Spirit of Man tour of Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds. The vinyl is out there in the wild, and of course, you can get the original, and you can stream it these days as well, can't you? Technology's caught up with that too.
Certainly has. In a way, it's amazed me. I don't know how you feel about it, Jason, but to see vinyl still with a real following when all any of us have to do is go on a streaming service and download what or just listen to whatever we want to.
I think the artwork makes a difference, and again, that's somewhere else that your work wins out as well, isn't it?
Well, not knowing in 1978 when it was first released that it would have such strength, and it's all been brought to life in our tours and our other productions. But yeah, what I wanted with the original double album was I don't mean it in any elaborate way, but I always heard and saw it as sort of like a sight and sound project. The heart and soul of it, of course, being the music and the story. But I just felt if people would listen to a double album, that's a long ask for anybody to listen to. But to stay with it, to help it along, to see these what were original commission paintings, to read the script and the lyrics if they wished. And I now know, looking back all these many years, how many people have done just that. So I'm very, again, coming back to pride. I'm proud of what it has survived to be and continues to be.
Absolutely, particularly for the fact that on the vinyl version, you couldn't pause it. The cassette version, you could stop it in the same place and come back to it. But this is very much a sit down and consume item, isn't it? It's not about bite size.
No, you're absolutely right. I've also had so many people over the years who told me, particularly because it was a youth orientated double album, or the audience that first grabbed onto it, that so many people would listen to it in the dark, so they could deliberately be scared, just because the sound and the storyline and the things that come out in the double album just, I guess, are enhanced when you're listening to it in the dark. So that was an unexpected bonus. But I guess in truth, everything about the life of my musical version has surprised me. So that's just another one of those things.
Well, a miraculous soundscape bringing fear when it needs to, and awe, and when it listens to the whole thing. I think it's an absolute. It is the iconic piece of work of its genre. Many have tried to copy what you've done here, but you can't beat the original. That is Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds. The musical, as we say, out on tour in 2025. It is the Spirit of Man tour. And once again, myticket.co.uk to find your tickets. Jeff, thank you for joining us. Thank you for chatting, and thank you for sharing some of the history of War of the Worlds.
Thank you so much, Jason, and for inviting me onto your program.